Welcome back, Seahawks. I'm your host, Jack Kessler, and this is The Current. We've got a fantastic episode for you today. We'll be meeting with the UNCW Communication Department's own Dr. Rick Olsen to discuss how the department has handled the COVID-19 crisis since his last interview. And later, we'll give the good doctor the spotlight as he and our very own Thaddaeus Freidline blast some tunes here in the studio. But for now, let's slide on over to Chris for this week's segment of Recurrent.
Thanks, Jack. Now, by the time this episode is released, this semester will be just about over. But with what's going on in Wilmington, you might just find a reason to stick around. On May 8th, the Carolina Beach Street Arts Festival opens to the public. The event's promoters promise that attendees will be able to celebrate visual, culinary, and performing arts by the sea, with local vendors displaying goods for sale. The event runs between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m., and admission is free, though some specific events require payment to attend. Also on the 8th, the Carolina Beach Fishing Pier will play host to this year's Surf Dog Experience. Between 8:30 and 11:30 a.m., spectators can watch dogs and their owners surf the waves for no charge, and can even register themselves and their furry friend for the event as well. Finally, this Sunday, students can attend Wilmington's weekly Riverfront Farmers Market in the city's historic downtown between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m., featuring such items as fresh fruits and berries, vegetables, plants, herbs, flowers, eggs, meats, cheese, and seafood. All attendees are required to wear a mask and practice social distancing. Now let's get back to Jack with this week's interview.
And we're back. Our guest this week is the head of the UNCW Communications Studies Department, Dr. Olsen. Great to have you here with us, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Now, it's been a while since you've sat down with us on the show. You were our first guest for the first season of The Current. We thank you for coming with us again.
Absolutely.
All right. First question. Overall, what are the lessons that have been learned from the COVID experience, at least in the Communication Department, Studies Department?
Well, I think one of the things we've learned is that the tools can work, like Canvas can work and Zoom can work and VoiceThread can work, and all of those tools can work if we know what we're doing and we deploy them consistently across several classes. Then students can learn the tools as well. So I think part of what we've seen is a narrowing of a toolbox that allows us to get done what we think is important. And if students can feel like, oh, I don't have to do this for this class and this for that class, but I learn a limited number of tools, we both feel better about it. I think that's one of the big takeaways. We're all sick of them right now, but I think when they get deployed along with face-to-face and return to campus, it'll feel a lot better.
Okay. That's interesting that you say that, because I experienced having to work through both Canvas and Blackboard while we were still going through the transition. That
Right.
was not the most...
Yeah. Too many tools is not a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Do you think the tools we have are appropriate? Do you think there are some issues with Zoom or Canvas? Have you had any issues with them in the past?
I think the harder issue right now is the unevenness of the student internet access. So campus apartments, it would be really good if they got really good internet, for the sake of hybrid classes or disruption. So I think a lot of the unevenness has been at the other end of what we're doing. If we've made it to campus, or if we've got stable internet on our end, that doesn't guarantee that you're having a good experience at your end. So I think that's one of the things we've got to be more sensitive to. We've got to figure out a way that the entire signal chain is rock solid. So and again, there are times when Zoom worked better than a traditional class, and there's times when it's absolutely imperative that we be face-to-face, real-time, doing the craft, having students speak up and try it again, and all that sort of stuff. So hopefully we can find a good balance.
Do you think that moving into a mix of both online Zoom-oriented classes and in-person classes, do you think that's going to be normal in the future, or would you rather we move to an all in-person?
I think when you're 12 minutes from the beach and you have thousands of beds in your residence hall, you've set yourself up for a robust undergraduate residential experience. And we think we need to make any apologies for that. That's who we've been, that's who we claim to be, and that's who I think most folks want us to be at a great level. Is a powerful transformational residential experience. That doesn't mean that with select grad programs or even select undergrad programs that we might not see a little bit more of a commitment to online. Where I think it works better is when we say this is a robust face-to-face experience enhanced by the strategic deployment. So for example, we learned that it's a whole lot easier to bring a COM alum back from California over Zoom than it is to try and find $2,000 in airline tickets plus an honorarium because they spent 3 days of their life getting here and getting back. So we're this week we're bringing in Martin Jarmond, who's a very successful alum. He's a 40 under 40 in the Sports Business Journal. He's the youngest athletic director ever in a top tier conference. He's the athletic director for UCLA. He's coming back via Zoom. And he'll be available to students, to COM alum, to the university community, et cetera. And he doesn't need a dime because he'll do it from his office. That's something that makes even our face-to-face residential experience better. So that's part of what we got to do is not lose that as we get so eager to get back to face-to-face.
Right. Lots of opportunities then.
Yes.
All right. Excellent. What lessons have you learned and applied to the courses that you personally teach?
Well, again, I thought I was pretty good at the tools until I really, really needed to rely on the tools. And then you find out that you're only mediocre at the tools. So, I hope I got better at the tools. I think all of us got better, and I think I got better about, what do I really want out of this assignment? What do I really want out of this week of lectures? What do I really want? And part of that was Floyd, too. I mean, when we think about the disruption UNCW's experienced, we have to include Floyd, because that was where we really experienced a sudden need to deal with disruption. We had to create 6-week versions of our classes once we were finally back up and running. And I think with a lot of that, we all went, okay, what's most important? And that's a really good thing for a teacher to think about. Not just what are my favorite stories, what are my favorite lectures, what have I always done, but what matters most when I've got 6 weeks. Or what matters most when I've got Zoom only or whatever. So I think that's the growth I went through as a teacher, and that's the growth I hope a lot of faculty went through. And then when we realize what matters most, then we can turn a little bit more of it over to discussion or activities or watch a TED Talk or go do this or cancel class in working groups and give me a one-page memo of what you guys got done. All that, we make room for those kinds of creative choices.
It's kind of trimming down the fat on all the classes, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And not that, fat's where you get your flavor. So if you're a cook out there, but there can be too much, right? And a lot of it is just legacy. This is what I've always done instead of what matters most. So I think that's been a nice growth for us.
Very interesting. I've experienced that myself, and I find Zoom has been, it's an easy way of facilitating groups where the professors can all put us into different groups. Sometimes it doesn't work all that well if the people don't want to discuss, but overall it's an effective replacement in a way.
Well, and I can't tell you how many times, as you know, in Comp 200 there's a lot of groups, and sometimes there are students from Jacksonville, or from fairly far away, or they're a non-trad with children, and for them to come back to campus for a traditional group meeting, very difficult. But now to go, let's Zoom, and I can stay at the beach, and you can be at your campus dorm, and this person can be in Jacksonville, and yet we can still have a really robust meeting, and we can throw it in Google Docs and simultaneously edit. To know those tools is not just about college anymore. That's going to be the contemporary working reality. The work from anywhere movement is happening. So we just had a job posting from one of our alums, very successful web-based marketing, and he's like, we were on Zoom before Zoom was cool, so do you know any students that can do this, this, and this for us? And they have to understand we're big on Zoom. So it's already a job expectation for an entry-level position that you can do Zoom well.
I'm going to have to put Zoom on my resume, aren't I?
If you know how to turn off the cat mask, you got to know how to turn off the cat mask.
Oh, man. All right. I think you would know this best, but what's the general feeling throughout the Communications Studies Department at this stage?
We are simultaneously exhausted and optimistic. We're tired too. I mean, it has been hard. It is hard to learn the tools. It's hard to try and maintain interest over Zoom. It's hard to try and maintain the enthusiasm and energy. And you know, we want to be face to face too, most of us. And so it's been hard. On the other hand, we know that, you know, the vaccine's rolling out, that fall will be, you know, summer will still be mostly online, but at least our lives will get normalized a little bit. And then we're very optimistic and hopeful that fall will be, you know, back to normal plus the enhancements that we've learned. So yeah, I would say we're both tired, like everybody else, just tired of masks, tired of isolation, tired of the boredom, tired of the emotional labor that it takes to get everybody through this.
And then when you say get classes back to normal, is that going to require anything? Is that going to require continue use of masks, or is that going to require mandatory vaccines?
That's still in flux. Some universities have already said we're requiring the vaccine. That's not unusual. That we require chickenpox, we require a variety of vaccines. So this doesn't seem to be that much of an overreach or any overreach to do that. UNCW hasn't decided what they're doing yet. With respect to requiring the vaccine, the campus capacity will be back to normal in the fall. So classrooms will be back to, you know, 30 if they were 30, et cetera. And so will the dorms. They'll be back to double occupancy and full suite occupancy, et cetera. So in that sense, we'll be back to normal. Obviously, we're keeping an eye on the variants and the vaccine rate of everybody. But New Hanover County's been great. I think most of our students are embracing the vaccine and you know, despite the Johnson & Johnson setback, I think folks are basically saying science can be trusted, and let's get this thing over with.
Now, we were using the Johnson & Johnson here on campus. What did you think about us pulling that?
I understand why we had to do it. I you know, in the overall, I mean, and again, this is where it gets weird, right? In the overall success rate, phenomenal. 6 women out of millions is actually amazing for any drug that anybody takes. But we still have to operate with an abundance of caution, see if there's something we can tweak, see if there's some sort of a blood type pattern or this or that pattern that can say, okay, the people with this genetic marker need to have Pfizer or Moderna. Hopefully there'll be some clear-cut answer like that, because we need all 3 of them. We need Johnson & Johnson, and so we just, hopefully it can be back up and running soon.
How do you think the university's overall approach to education is going to change in the future? And we spoke obviously before of moving to more online usage, but what else do you think is going to change? Well,
I'll start with the one thing that UNCW did absolutely great at. I mean, the one thing that I would say we've been fantastic at is allowing local decisions to be made at the local level. In other words, a classroom instructor understands best what model of class delivery will work for them. There were many administrations at other campuses that were very heavy-handed and said you can either do this or this, and that we avoided. Now there was some complexity, but overall, I think that's one thing we did very, very well. And if we continue to have that mindset, I think that's going to be the marker moving forward, is that trainings will be available for faculty to self-select the tools that they think will best deliver their class. Either best deliver their class solely regarding learning outcomes. What do I need you to learn? So in COM 200, I don't have groups because I'm lazy. I have groups because you guys need to learn how to work in groups, because that's what's coming next, you know? And so there's a reason, there's a learning outcome for group work. Okay, great. There are learning outcomes for some of the other tools, whether it's Adobe intensive, whether it's work from anywhere skills. And so you do need to learn how to upload a file, and you do need to learn to save as or print to PDF, because that's a real thing. So, you know, to me, the more we're able to say all of this stuff we learned, what are the real things to keep, what are the real skills to keep, and then provide training for faculty and students and through the Keep Teaching site, through the Keep Learning site, and through other things. Bring freshmen over and figure out how to have a Zoom. I mean, they learned a lot of it in high school, but eventually, before you know it, if we're not careful, everybody's going to go, "What's Zoom?" Because they didn't have it in their high school. So we'll see. But I think that's where UNCW did right, and I think that's where they'll continue to do right, is to provide training for faculty to self-select the tools they need.
Do you think this move towards a very tech-intensive kind of education, is that going to make it harder for poorer students to get ahead, those who can't afford such items?
That's a fantastic point. The digital divide is real, and there's obviously movements that say internet access should be a right, not a privilege. That certainly there's a lot of good reasoning for that. I think what UNCW has to do is, even if we can't solve the world, we can solve for the 20,000 students that come to UNCW. And so what we have to do is absolutely be able to say, where do you go if you need help with the tools? And that has to become super crystal clear. How do you get stable internet? Where do you go if your landlord is not providing sufficiently stable internet, but it's folded into the rent, so you can't upgrade independently? How do we do technology advocacy right? How do we do technology provision right? The laptops can be checked out in the library, and that's certainly helpful. But we gotta keep an eye on it and do all that we can.
All right. Are there any final thoughts you'd like to share?
I think the one thing that I think is super important for everybody to understand is that you learned real things. Like, not only in terms of real class content, even though it was delivered over Zoom or other things, but again, the skill set, the asynchronous collaboration, the use of Zoom, the use of collaborative tools like Google Docs and those kinds of things, Microsoft Teams. Those are real things. And so it can feel like I got ripped off, man. I didn't get a real college experience. It's like, okay, but if you're looking at the trade journals right now, there are businesses selling their properties right and left, or working out shared office space because you're only going to come in Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and she's only going to come in Tuesday, Thursday. Mm-hmm. So it's real, and that's what I think people need to sort of hang their hats on a little bit, is that I learned real things that are going to carry with me. It wasn't just about surviving COVID. It's about getting ready for the way the world's probably going to play itself out for at least the next several decades.
The next several decades. Thank you
right.
very much, sir. Thank you for sitting down with us. All right. And now, for our final segment, for our second to last show, we turn to our own Thaddaeus Freidline and the good doctor for a jam session. Let's go to them now. Well, that's a wrap. From all of us here at the Current's A Team, we wish you a happy summer, and we'll see you next year. Have a good one.